Ryan had always dreamed of owning a place he could call his own. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video. So when he stumbled upon a real estate listing for an old but charming house nestled near a quiet forest and lake, it felt like destiny. The price was shockingly low, suspiciously low, some might say, but Ryan didn't care. He wasn't one to pass up on a good deal. The house had been vacant for years and needed serious work, but that was part of the appeal. He could renovate it on his own terms, turn it into a forever home. What he didn't know, though, was that this house was hiding something. And it wasn't in the walls or under the floorboards. It was somewhere far stranger. It started with a sound. Ryan had been working in the smaller upstairs bedroom, finishing up the last coat of paint on the ceiling. It had been a long day, and he decided to take a break in the garden. The sun was warm, the breeze calm, and for a moment, life felt perfect. But just as he gathered his tools to move into the larger bedroom, he paused. There it was again. A faint, distant noise like a thud or a stomp, just loud enough to catch his attention. He froze, listening, but it quickly stopped. Probably just the house settling, he told himself. Old houses do that, right? Still, something about it felt off. He tried to ignore it. After all, he was alone. The house was locked. No reason to be worried. But the next day, it happened again. And this time, it was louder, more deliberate. A heavy stomp from above. Ryan dropped the tool he was holding and ran outside, scanning the rooftop. Nothing. Just a small bird hopping near the edge. No sign of anyone or anything that could have made such a noise. Back inside, the sound continued sporadically. A stomp here, a soft creak there, then a cry, muffled but distinct. A child's voice, crying. That's when Ryan's heart sank. He scoured the house, room by room, checking every closet, every dark corner. He even crawled under the stairs, flashlight in hand. Nothing. The house was empty. At least, it looked empty. That night, he barely slept. His dreams were filled with shadowy figures and distant whispers. When he woke the next morning, he felt like he hadn't slept at all. But as the sun rose, the fear faded. He told himself he was just tired. Renovating alone had been exhausting early mornings, late nights, endless tasks. Maybe he was just hearing things. That logic worked for a while. Until the next day. He had taken the day off, finally allowing himself to rest. He laughed about the strange noises to himself, even planned to tell his friends once he had a decent internet connection again. But while making his morning coffee, it happened. A loud, unmistakable stomp from the ceiling directly above him. The mug nearly slipped from his hand. He stood, frozen in the kitchen, eyes fixed on the ceiling. It wasn't his imagination. It wasn't a bird. And it certainly wasn't just the house settling. This was real. He raced up the stairs, and the noises continued stomps, cries, now even whispers. He placed his ear to the ceiling. Yes, they were coming from inside it, from the space above. His hands trembled as he grabbed his hammer. He didn't know what he'd find, but he had to know. The first few hits barely scratched the surface. The ceiling was thick, aged concrete with layers of insulation. But eventually, dust and bits of plaster began to fall. Then a crack opened, then a hole, and then a voice, a child's voice. "We are finally free." Ryan nearly dropped the hammer. He stared through the growing hole, unsure of what he was even looking for. Then he saw them faces, small, dirt-streaked faces peering down at him from the shadows of the crawl space above the ceiling. Kids. It took a few seconds for the shock to wear off. Once it did, the kids started laughing. One by one, they crawled out of the ceiling thin, mischievous, and covered in cobwebs. As it turned out, they weren't ghosts. They weren't trapped. They were neighborhood kids who had been using the abandoned house as their secret clubhouse for years. They had found a way in through a hole in the attic and made the crawl space their own hideout. When Ryan bought the house and started fixing it up, they panicked. They didn't want to lose their secret place. So they came up with a plan. Scare the new guy away. They stomped on the beams, whispered through vents, and even played sound clips on a small Bluetooth speaker they'd hidden above the ceiling. The crying? Pre-recorded. The stomping? Performed by one of the older boys in heavy boots. Ryan couldn't believe it. All that fear, all those sleepless nights, and it had all been a prank. At first, he was angry. But looking at the kids nervous, half smiling, clearly not expecting to get caught, couldn't stay mad. In fact, he laughed. Hard. They all sat in the garden that afternoon, sharing sodas and telling stories. Ryan promised them he wouldn't kick them out completely. They could keep using the yard and even help out with renovations, as long as they stayed out of the ceiling. And they did. They came by often, helping with odd jobs, bringing snacks, even painting a mural in the garage wall. The house that once terrified Ryan became a place of laughter and community. The kids became like little siblings. And the house? It was finally full of life again. As weeks passed, Ryan's home started looking less like a haunted construction zone and more like the cozy, vibrant haven he had dreamed of. With the kids helping out under supervision now, of course he finished painting, installed new windows, fixed the porch steps, and even built a small shed in the backyard. What had begun as a terrifying experience transformed into one of the most unexpectedly heartwarming chapters of his life. The kids came by almost every day after school, knocking politely before entering and bringing their quirky, contagious energy. There was Leo, the self-proclaimed master of pranks, who had originally led the spooky operation from the attic. Emma, who quietly painted flower murals in every corner she could find. And Max, the oldest, who didn't say much, but always showed up ready to hammer nails or carry tools. One day, while they were all sitting on the back patio sipping cold lemonade, Leo sheepishly brought up the prank again. "We really didn't think it'd go that far," he said, his voice low. "We just wanted to scare you a bit so you'd leave." Ryan smiled. "Well, mission accomplished. I nearly broke my lease with myself." They all laughed. It wasn't long before the neighbors' real ones, the adults, began to notice the change too. People who had avoided that old property for years started stopping by to say hello. Some admitted they always thought the house was cursed, or bad luck. Others were simply shocked to see someone actually fixing it up. The wild stories they told Ryan over evening coffees made him realize just how deep the mystery surrounding the place had gone. Apparently, the last owner had vanished overnight, left the house fully furnished, bills unpaid, pets abandoned. That event, years ago, had planted the seeds for all kinds of rumors, that it was haunted, or used for rituals, or had once been the site of something sinister. Ryan listened to each story with wide eyes, always amused by how tall the tales had become. None of them were true, of course, except for one curious detail. According to one elderly neighbor named Mrs. Aldridge, there had indeed been strange noises coming from the house even before it was abandoned. Ryan paused when she told him this. "Wait, before?" he asked. "Before the last owner left?" She nodded solemnly. "Oh yes, that's why no one wanted to buy it," said they heard voices, creaking, whispers in the night. He chuckled nervously. "Well, I've got a good explanation for that now." But as he walked back home, something gnawed at him. He was sure the kids had only recently found their way in, and their prank had started after he moved in it before. Could someone else have been hiding up there years earlier? Or was the house's history deeper than he realized? He shook off the thought. He had rebuilt this place, made it his own, painted over its ghosts literal or not. One evening, as the sun set in orange and purple streaks, Ryan sat alone on the patio. The house was quiet. The kids had gone home. Tools were neatly arranged in the shed. The wind rustled the trees in the distance. He stared up at the attic window, the one where he first thought he'd seen movement weeks ago. It was still now, peaceful. Just as he stood up to head inside, a faint sound echoed from above. A creak. Then a whisper. He froze. "Hello?" Ryan tilted his head, heart skipping. "Kids?" he called. No answer. The attic window remained dark. He chuckled. Very funny, guys. But when he checked his phone, a message blinked on the screen. It was from Max. "Hey, Ryan, none of us came by today. Leo's grounded. Emma's at the dentist. Just wanted to say thanks for letting us be part of the house. See you this weekend." Ryan slowly lowered the phone. That night, he slept with the light on. Ryan didn't mention the whisper to Anyo Ninette, the kids, not his new neighbors, and certainly not himself out loud. He told himself it had to be the wind, maybe the old wood groaning. After all, the house still had quirks, but in the back of his mind, the doubt lingered. Just enough to keep him locking the attic door every night, even though he hadn't gone up there in weeks. Days turned into weeks, and the house settled into a rhythm. The once creaky halls now echoed with laughter. The smell of fresh paint had finally faded into the scent of home-cooked meals, and Ryan, against all odds, felt something he hadn't expected. Contentment. He even started hosting little weekend lunches. The kids would help set up, and neighbors would drop by, bringing homemade pies, grilled vegetables, and old stories of what the house used to be. People had stopped calling it the haunted house, and had started calling it Ryan's place. The change wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. One weekend, as autumn leaves began falling around the yard, Ryan invited the kids to help him build a treehouse. It was Leo's idea. Of course, he insisted that the huge oak in the corner of the yard was practically begging for it. Ryan smiled and agreed. They worked on it for days, with Ryan doing the heavy lifting and the kids coming up with secret lookout names and trapdoor escape routes. Emma painted stars on the inside walls. Max quietly rigged up a pulley system for Snack. By the time it was done, the treehouse wasn't just an add-on, it was a symbol of change, of healing, of belonging. After they finished, Ryan surprised them. "I've got one last gift," he said with a grin. He reached into a box and pulled out a small wooden sign, carved by hand. It read, "The Hideaway, friends welcome, ghosts must knock." The kids burst into laughter. That night, Ryan lit a fire in the backyard pit. They all sat around it under a sky full of stars. He roasted marshmallows with the kids and shared stories about his childhood. For the first time in a long time, he felt rooted, grounded, not just in a house, but in a home. As the fire crackled and the kids eventually drifted home, Ryan lingered a bit longer in the quiet. The attic window stood above him, still and dark, just barely visible from the lawn. And then, for a split second, it flickered. A light, just a faint, soft glow like a candle's breath. Ryan blinked, heart pausing. Then, just as quickly, the glow was gone. But this time, he didn't flinch. He didn't grab a flashlight. He didn't panic. Instead, he smiled. "All right," he said softly to the air. "If you're still here, thanks for letting me stay."